Welcome everyone, StealthyShiroean here, and today I'm bringing you my 2025 year-end review of Humble Choice. For those unfamiliar, I take the time to look back over the year on the channel, and to name what I think is the best bundle of 2025. Before we get into that though, I want to start things off by thanking everyone for the support over the past year. Or years for some of you. The channel has another 600 or so subscribers from the last time I made a video like this, and I'm grateful that people still care enough to listen to what I have to say. So thank you one and all for your continual support going into the new year. Okay, let's take a look at the games I played past the review. And by that, I mean the games I played past the hour I used to make my Humble Choice reviews. Normally, I have trouble getting to even just one game from each month, however, this year is a little different from years past. In April, Deckhead and I started Humble Talk. It's a podcast where we discuss the Humble Choice bundle further and provide expanded thoughts and insights based on more playtime past our initial reviews. And for those who don't know, Deckhead also makes Humble Choice reviews. Links to both his channel and the Humble Talk podcast below or in the card above. Anyway, this means that I actually got to play quite a few games from most of the bundles this year. So to keep me from repeating myself, I'll try to be succinct in my thoughts on each and whether or not my final ratings has changed. But before I get into all that, I'd like to do my normal numbers breakdown. Last year, I played 5 of the 96 games we received, however this year I got to a whopping 58 out of 96. Once again, this is solely because of the podcast. So compared to last year, many of the games I played extra this year were only for another hour or two instead of spending a lot more time with any one game. Out of the 96 games, I rated 17 of them as must-plays compared to last year's 14, and out of the 17, I played 13, but again, solely because of the podcast. If I were to take the podcast out of the equation, then there's probably only a few games I played past the review and the podcast. And as I say every year, these numbers really mean nothing, as the time I put into the games isn't determined by my own perceived quality of each, but simply just, I don't have all the time in the world. So take from this what you will, but I don't mean it as a judgment of Humble Choice quality or lack thereof. Alright, with that out of the way, I'll quickly go through what I did play, and be sure to let me know what you got around to playing and your thoughts in the comments below. In January and February, I didn't actually get to play any of these games. There were definitely a couple I wanted to get around to, but never quite found the time, like Against the Storm and Trepang 2. In March, I actually played a few of these despite starting Humble Talk in April, and this is because Deckhead and I did a dry run episode that was never released. So I ended up playing Wild Hearts, Tales of Kanzara, Homeworld 3, and Cavern of Dreams. Wild Hearts was a fun game and has some neat ideas with the katakuri. I'm unsure if I'd keep it at a must-play though. And now that I'm looking back, I think I'd give that title to Pacific Drive because taking care of the car is just really fun. And bump Wild Hearts down to a strong recommendation. My thoughts on Tales of Kanzara and Homeworld 3 largely stayed the same. Tales of Kanzara offered up a fun Metroidvania and felt solid if a bit easy, but I probably just needed to up the difficulty. Homeworld 3 seemed like a decent RTS, although the controls felt a bit odd to get used to, and I don't really know that I'd be returning to it. Finally, Cavern of Dreams, I place it as a strong recommendation, but I think I'd move this down to a weak recommendation now. I played it with my daughter, and very shortly after the hour with the review, I started running into walls where I didn't know what to do, and we quickly set it aside after the initial shine wore off. In April, I actually played all of them past the review because I was crazy that month, but the one I put the most amount of time into was easily Dredge. I'm actually a bit sad that I haven't gone back to the game since, because I really enjoyed the atmosphere of it. Aliens Dark Descent also nailed the atmosphere and horror despite being a top-down game, which is insane to me. Those two, and really most of the rest of that month's bundle, I still stand by my original ratings. However, I think I'd bump down 1000X Resist to a weak recommendation. The story is interesting, and it's obviously the narrative that will keep someone playing over the lackluster gameplay, but the heavy emphasis on narrative made it feel more like a walking sim or visual novel, which aren't genres that appeal to me, which is why this would be far down on my pile of games to play next. From the May bundle, I also played all of these as well for this month. Once again, largely my thoughts remain the same. While my ratings didn't change, I'd say that Star Wars Bounty Hunter just further frustrated me as I played more, but I still think the idea of playing Jango Fett makes it appealing. Ultros had a cool mechanic with time passing and the game world changing based on the player's actions. Once again, my other thoughts on it didn't change, but that mechanic that I came across later was quite unique and I think might be worth jumping into for just that itself. The game where I did change my mind was to bump up Evil West from strong recommendation to must play. Deck and I put several hours into this and I had a ton of fun with it. It really surprised me just how well the game played, how fun the combat was, and even how much world building and effort was put into the story. I mean, it's not going to be winning any awards, but it was a fun game that I think many will overlook. From June, I put more time into Nobody Wants to Die, Scare Ritual, Tachia, and Biped. Other than Biped, my thoughts actually did change on the first three. I think the very linear nature of Nobody Wants to Die was a bit disappointing, so while the world and story seemed interesting, I'd bump that down to a weak recommendation. Scare Ritual was still a fun surprise, but after putting more time into it with Deck, I think it could have benefited from a bit more polish and clearer objectives, so I'd bump that down to a weak recommendation as well. Tachia has a really fun mechanic where you can play as just about anything by jumping into various objects or creatures. However, playing this more with my daughter has made me bump it down from a must-play to a strong recommendation. And that's because some of the darker elements of Tachia, like a monster eating a child, that weren't really suitable for a young kid. And honestly, it gave me huge whiplash just in the overall tone of the game versus some of these elements. I still hope to be able to return to this someday with my daughter, but probably when she's a good 5 or so years older. One last note, I'd also move Havendock down to a don't bother with. I only put in a bit more time to get B-roll for the podcast video, but after that and talking with Deck about it, yeah, it just isn't that fun. There are better survival games or colony builders out there that you probably already have in your game library. In July, I played Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, Cat Quest 3, Daemon X Machina, Wizard with the Gun, and Ever After Falls. Rogue Trader is still a game that I'd like to get back to at playing some point, and Cat Quest 3 was a game that I actually played a ton with my daughter. Additionally, Daemon X Machina and Ever After Falls also stay the same. Although, if I were to rate Daemon X Machina purely based on its multiplayer, then I'd bump it down to a don't bother with. But as it stands, it does have some fun elements to it that I'm not sure you can find in too many other places. Wizard with a Gun, however, definitely gets bumped down to a weak recommendation. It has a unique blend of roguelite, survival, and extraction genres, but in the end, it just started feeling a bit stale after the first hour. From August, I played more Persona 5, Banisher's Ghost of New Eden, My Time at Sandrock, Little Gator Game, Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip, and Wildmender. Most of my thoughts have remained the same, but I feel like I can safely move Persona 5 from a strong recommendation to a must-play. I mean, I pretty much knew that, but with only having a small amount of time, it was hard to say for sure. But after spending almost 4 hours with it, I felt that the story and characters were interesting enough to make it worthwhile, let alone any of the gameplay. Little Gator Game is another title that I'm actually going to bump up to a must-play. It's a simple enough game, but the developers really knew what they were doing with the gameplay loop. It's surprisingly addictive, and my daughter and I had a lot of fun helping out various animals and destroying cardboard monsters. From September's bundle, I got around to playing Destiny 2, Spellforce Conquest of Ao, Eastern Exorcist, and Warhammer 40k Speed Freaks. After spending more time with Destiny 2, I'd actually put this as a weak recommendation now. The minute-to-minute gameplay is fun, but I felt the onboarding and overall direction for new players isn't the greatest, which made things unintuitive for me. Conquest of Ao actually surprised me with a seemingly well-made campaign with RPG elements, basically what this series is known for, and I was happy to change my mind and place it as a strong recommendation. Eastern Exorcist still stays the same. It seemed like a fun side-scroller action-adventure with decent enough combat. It's nothing special, but something I think I could still recommend to some. Finally, it pains me to say it, but I think I'd play Speed Freaks as a don't bother with now, simply due to the lack of people playing. Yes, the game has bots, but I easily outclassed the hardest difficulty after just a couple hours, and I wouldn't consider myself a skilled player. But yeah, the game seemed fun and had some great ideas, but unless you have a ton of friends, I don't think it's worth playing. In October, the games I played past the review were System Shock, Crypt Masters, Shogun Showdown, and Hotel Renovator. And despite all the past months where the ratings changed, my thoughts on these games stayed the same. System Shock still surprised me that it was so ahead of its time, Crypt Masters is insanely unique and I feel it should be experienced just for that. Shogun Showdown is a fun turn-based tactical roguelite, which you won't hear me say often, and Hotel Renovator still sucked. November, I played Total War Warhammer 3, No More Heroes 3, Pharaoh A New Era, and Paleo Pines. No More Heroes 3 and Pharaoh A New Era stay the same, although I would say that you probably already have to be a fan of Impression city builders in order to fully appreciate Pharaoh. Otherwise, that might be a weak recommendation because some things do feel a bit archaic. Paleo Pines drops down to a don't bother with. It tries, but ultimately feels boring. Even my daughter, who's 5, found it eventually boring, which is crazy given the visuals and simplicity definitely seems to be targeting a younger audience. Since the review, and even the podcast, I've actually put in a ton of time into Warhammer 3, having started an Immortals campaign with a friend. I definitely bumped this to a must-play now. The amount of different choices from the factions to unit variety is just astounding, and the Immortals campaign map is amazing just how large it is and how much a Total War game is juggling all at once. I'd love to see something similar in a historical setting, preferably an Empire 2, but with the announcement of Medieval 3, I imagine I probably have close to a decade to wait before we might even have a chance to see that. For December, the games I played a bit more were Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, Lost Skies, Dungeon Tycoon, and Beholder Conductor. And once again, my thoughts on these remain more or less the same. Other than Lost Skies, where upon thinking on it more, I probably would place this as a weak recommendation. With its optimization issues and some other weird design decisions, I'd see people maybe not sticking with this. At the same time, it has some really cool mechanics, especially with the grappling hook physics and the ability to construct and fly your own airship. Phew, that is a lot of games I played. I didn't quite get that at least one game played each month, but it's looking like I probably will next year because of Humble Talk. Although, maybe I need to change my parameters to games I played past the review and the podcast since it's getting too easy. I'll take my win for this year though. However, I did also play some games for the channel outside of Humble Choice and just wanted to talk about some of my favorites. Technically, this first one I played mainly in 2024, but released the review for it this year for Plague Tale Innocence. It's actually my best performing video to date, so I'm quite pleased with that. That aside, the game is just amazing. I keep telling myself to play the sequel, and I hope to rectify that in 2026 with an accompanying video of my thoughts. Age of Darkness was another fun one that I feel is a bit overlooked. The single player campaign is alright, but the actual survival mode is where all the fun is. My wife and I had a ton of fun trying to optimize our defenses so we could hold out against the seemingly never-ending hordes of monsters. It did nail-biting tension so well, and as a horde survival RTS that is also multiplayer, well, that's something you don't really see. I think the video I'm most proud of this year was my sorta retrospective sorta review of Assassin's Creed 1. I had a ton of fun putting that video together, and I love doing something quite a bit different from what I was used to. I have plans for more really long form content in the future that will be a bit different, but tackle games in a similar fashion. Not to mention, this video in particular was enjoyable because I went back to an old classic I hadn't touched in years, and came out of it with a much more positive outlook on a game I assumed I had no interest in playing again. Finally, I played a ton of Dead Zone Rogue, which may surprise some of you to find that it's a roguelite. I thought the fast-paced first-person shooter action was great, and trying to figure out powerful builds was a lot of fun. This was something that I played rather regularly and couldn't really put down, which once again is surprising to me given its roguelite elements. Okay, now we're finally at the moment that we've all been waiting for. Or maybe you just skipped ahead to this section. Either way, I just want to take up a couple more seconds by saying, if you're enjoying the video or found it helpful, then please consider giving this video a like and subscribing for more video game coverage in the form of reviews, first impressions, and of course more Humble Choice reviews. And despite me sounding like a broken record saying these words every video, I am immensely appreciative of the support you guys give. Liking and commenting go a long way to help growth for the channel because it tells the algorithm that you give a crap about my stuff, so maybe other potential viewers might too. Of course, to any who want to go above and beyond, then sharing my videos is a great way to help out more actively. And any sort of monetary support is of course super appreciative. This year, with the help of a viewer, I was able to get a new mic since many had complained about my old one, and rightfully so. I'm very grateful, so if you're watching, thank you once again for your help. If you'd like to donate anything at all, then you could use the Super Thanks feature on YouTube, or consider joining my YouTube membership. I can't really promise anything other than a badge, some emotes, and my eternal thanks, but every little bit is obviously really helpful. And if you can't support in this way, then no worries at all. As I said, even just liking and commenting is super helpful and motivating for me to make more content. So once again, thank you and looking forward to what 2026 brings. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's get to it. So just as a reminder, or maybe not if this is your first time to one of these videos, my scoring goes like this. 3 points for titles I rated as must-plays, 2 points for strong recommendations, 1 for weak recommendations, and 0 for don't bother with. With all that in mind, here are the original values I gave for each month from their respective reviews. So from the initial scores at the time, August is clearly the unequivocal winner. However, there were a lot of changes to the scores this year because of the extra playtime for the podcast. With the new scores now on screen, well, there's been a lot of months that lost points actually. June in particular took a devastating hit. However, August actually came out better from the additional playtime, moving up to an 18. Interestingly enough, the only other time a month scored that high for me was back in February 2023. So it's been a while that I've thought that highly about a bundle. And I think one look at the August bundle, and many would probably easily say, it was the best bundle this year solely because of Persona 5. I'm sure many picked it up for that alone. However, the rest of the cast of games did pull their own weight as well. Along with Persona 5, I'm still really eager to play Banishers and My Time at Sandrock. Also, my daughter and I still boot up Little Gator Game and Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip from time to time. It's an all-around good month, and I agree with my past assessment of it. So, there you have it. August is the best month of 2025. This is definitive and clearly the case. Or maybe not. I'd love for you to tell me what you thought was the best Humble Choice month this year, especially if you don't think it was August. Heck, maybe you think I'm crazy for not choosing some other month. Let me know. And one last thing before we wrap up 2025, I'd like to take a second to go over the yearly average. For 2025, the yearly average, using the adjusted values, is 12.6, with 6 months failing to meet that score. And man, that is rough if I'm being honest. Last year the average was 13, and the year before it was 13.6. However, I would like to remind everyone that this year was quite a bit different to previous years since I had more time with a lot of the games this past year, whereas in the past it would only be a few. I wonder if I had put in the same amount of time in past years if many of those values would also be lower. Also, despite the price increase, I still feel that Humble Choice is a value if we're looking at it as $15 USD for 8 games, which makes it less than $2 a game. Obviously, most aren't going to want every game in the bundle, but even if there's at least 2 or 3, then I still think it's generally worth it. Assuming it's not going into a digital dust-filled collection never to see the light of day again, that is. And that wraps up my thoughts on the past year of Humble Choice. Do you agree with my thoughts? What month or months were your favorite? And what did you get around to playing this year? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a happy new year.